Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Continuing spring football coverage. And hey, we're going to the trenches. Offensive line, defensive line talk right here. We'll hear from both coaches, Rob Sell on the offensive line coach, on the offensive line side, of course, and then Gerald Chatman on the defensive line. But then we'll also go and hear from a couple offensive linemen, Jake Slaughter, the All-American, and Austin Barber. So plenty to get into. Trench warfare, strengths in the trenches here. That's the theme of this one. Of course, these press conferences happening because of spring football practice. So plenty to get into, of course, with the Gators right now and out there on that practice field, for spring football. So certainly you got into pads for the first time on Tuesday. So we'll hear from Billy Napier on Thursday. So we'll have a updated episode probably over the weekend there, unless something big comes out there from Billy Napier's side of things. But lots to get into, of course, with spring practice happening right now for the Gators. Everybody hit that like button, subscribe right here, but smash that like button. Really, really helps us out right here on YouTube. Helps that algorithm, if you want to share, like what we do here, it goes a long way, of course. Subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. If you haven't done that yet, what you waiting on? You might think you're subscribed. Make sure you are. Get those updates when we go live right here on Gators Breakdown. So, plenty to get into. I mean, for talking about these position groups, it is a strength now. It's a strength in the trenches coming out of 2024, heading into spring. We would not have said that a year ago. We weren't able to say it on either side for much of last season, but both sides are forced toward the end of the season and have to use that as a launching point. So we'll hear from Rob Sell, Jake Slaughter, Austin Barber from the offensive line, defensive line coach Gerald Chatman. He'll share his thoughts on the defensive line, but plenty to get into on that side of the ball, and now can be considered strengths in some way. You got to replace more on the defensive line, of course, but we'll get into that conversation a bit. There's some good potential there. Of course, keeping it going right here, our spring football coverage right here on Gators Breakdown, brought to you by Florida Victorious all spring long. And with all the new going on, it's a great time to join. You can be the difference by joining Florida Victorious. Your support can directly impact the outcome on the field. You want to help the Gators win? You want a better game day experience? Well, just like when you pack the swamp, your unwavering support through Florida Victorious empowers the Gators to be their best. If you enjoy player access, you'll find even more of it at Florida Victorious. Members receive invitations to exclusive events like the meet and greet after the spring game. And there's a meet and greet going on for the SEC tournament, all kinds of stuff. I think right now there's a lunch with, I think, Trayon Webb, Austin Barber, and maybe Jake Slaughter. I saw that. I mean, anyway, go check that out. There's a lunch happening where you can go have lunch with players. You got to be a Florida Victorious member to do that. You get access to exclusive merchandise and memorabilia, great sports coverage there from Nick De La Torre, and more. There's never been a better time to join. So join today, make a difference in bringing the victory to the orange and blue. Visit floridavictorious.com to join now. And also, hey, a little bit, I don't know if you've seen it on social media or not, but some new Gators Breakdown merch right there. Little strutting gator, little cloud art there with the Gators Breakdown, spelling out the shape of the gator. Link is in the description. Or go to gatorsbreakdownmerch.com. But some good new designs right there. Proud of those. But all kinds of good stuff right there. You can support Gators Breakdown. I get asked all the time, man, how can we support you, Dave? What you doing with Gators Breakdown? There's one way right there. You get Gators Breakdown Plus if you want to join that as well. There's a link to that in the description. But hey, if you want to support some little Gators Breakdown look, there you go. gatorsbreakdownmerch.com. Okay. All right. Plenty to get into. So let's start with Rob Sell, offensive line coach, of course, there with Jonathan DeCoster. We'll hear from him I'm sure later on this spring as well. But we'll get started with Rob Sell, of course, been here the whole time. Is Billy Napier going into his fourth season as well. Been here the whole time with Billy Napier. And has plenty to say about this offensive line group.
This is by far the deepest offensive line room that we've had since we've been here. We got guys that can play, and recruiting's first about evaluation, Everybody wants a 5-star and 4-star. I get it. And there's some that you want, and then there's some you kind of look at, go, I don't see that with my eye. But Coach Napier does a great job of evaluating offensive linemen as well. He's a closet offensive line coach, and may be able to have a team of O-line coaches that we have and develop them in the way we break down individual. We script. There's nobody never standing around. There's a year-round plan for development. It's not a one-day deal. It's not a one-week deal. It's repeatedly doing the same thing over and over, revamping it, quality controlling your work, and I do like the room. It's really talented.
Marcus Masco moving over to center, what went into that, and what are you seeing from him so far?
He's done a really, really good job. He has. It's not. It's not easy to put your hand on the ball to snap. Then you got to call the front, make the mic declaration, and get the offensive line on the same page. So, believe it or not, snapping has not been the issue. You think it kind of would have some issue there, but he's been really clean with it, and so he's going to continue to get better there. I see a bright future there for him. Really, really pleased there.
And obviously, Jake coming back, first off, just how big is it to have an All-American center leading your unit, and how big is that for Masco to work?
Yeah, Marcus is not the only center. There's other guys in there that put their hands on the ball to be able to learn from Jake, and obviously having Jake back with the experience, he's a good player, just a great person. He does everything the right way, and he's the glue in there in the offensive line, and other people see that. And so when you recruit a freshman, they don't know any different. They see that that's the standard in the room. So very pleased with him, yeah.
Rod Kearney at guard, I know he's gotten a little bigger too. What do you think so far?
He's doing really well. That's his natural position to play guard, I think sometimes when you're a guy that come in to play center, a little spinning a little bit, then he's going to guard where it's a little, you got sideboards next to you, and the communication aspects off his plate. So I'm pleased with him for sure. And not to say that he can't go back in there and put his hand on the ball. I think sometimes if you go out there and play guard, it slows it down a little bit at center sometimes.
Do you still keep cross-training Bryce, or do you want him to focus on right tackle?
Right now he's just focusing on right tackle, but listen, Bryce has played left. He's played at all 5 positions. So, once you go out there and competing for the starting right tackle spot, he can go in there and play another position. This won't be nothing for him.
He said that's where he spent most of his first year, was at right tackle. Does he have a comfort level there because of that background? Yeah,
he does. Bryce is just a really good athlete. He's can bend, he has twitch, he has the size. There's some tackles that, hey, can you go in there and play center? It's a foreign world for him in there to be able to bend. And he's one of the only guys that I've ever coached that has the skill set to play all 5. Now, will he have to go in there and play center? Probably not for us, So we got some talent there. We got some guys that can do it, but he's doing really well.
Who are the other guys in the mix at right tackle?
Everybody's right now is we're playing, but right now on the right side, you got Bryce Lovett, you got Caden Jones who's doing really well, you got Devin Manuel. On the left side, you have Austin Barber, Fletcher, and going with the 1s and 2s right there. So, as this thing goes, how are we going to get the best 5? What's the best 5 combination? What's the long road going to look like? So, but we have options, which is a really good thing.
Man, that's probably the best thing for this offensive line we haven't been able to say for a while, and why it's a team strength now. Not just because 4 or 5 starters are returning, but Florida has some options. There's finally some depth I think at this offensive line. Now, hey, look, even the guys, if it's the same 4 guys that we claim as starters, and they're the ones who even they can take a jump, even they can play better. You'll hear that in just a bit with some of their thoughts as well. But as we kind of pointed out coming into this, they didn't have the best start to last season either, and got better and better and better as the season went on. And you're hoping that, the end of last season is kind of a launching point for these guys. But returning 4 or 5 starters, and of course starts with Jake Slaughter, All-American center, Barber, George, Harris, back in the starting roles. But just to create competition, I think Barber, Harris, and Slaughter, man, he probably pretty wrapped up, but I think there might be some competition on that right side. I mean, Slaughter, 82 overall PFF grade, of course. When you're an All-American, you're going to have a high grade like that, of course. I mean, Damian George had a 70.6. Love it with a 69.9. They were, among Florida's top offensive players overall there. But of course, you just heard Rob Sale talk about that major battle going on at right tackle, replacing Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, who by the end of the season was playing really well at right tackle. He just allowed 1 sack, no quarterback hits, and 316 pass blocking snaps. He had an 81.6 PFF grade. So, I mean, if you want to go by that, that was something to look for. But you just heard Bryce Lovett leads the competition. I think he'll probably get that as long as it trends the way we thought coming into spring, the way spring continues. I think Bryce Lovett's going to have that right tackle spot pretty much there. But you heard Devin Manuel, Caden Jones, Fletcher Westfall, going to the other side as well to back up Austin Barber. But Manuel Jones may be fighting for that right tackle spot as well. But I think that's going to be Bryce Lovett. But when you can throw in names like Devin Manuel and Caden Jones and Fletcher Westfall, I mean, you can start to see where Florida's building some depth at the tackle spot now as well. So I think it is a competition, but a competition Lovett was probably going to end up walking away with by the time spring practice ends. Then, of course, you start going to position changes. Some of the storyline here, and Florida trying to get more depth at guard. I mentioned I think it's a competition on the right side too between Roger Kearney and Damian George. I think it's a real competition there. And Damian George, I thought, was playing also pretty well by the time the season ended last year. And if you see a Roger Kearney supplant him, that's probably a really good sign that Kearney came in his third season now. This is his third season, highly recruited. Had to take some time to get his body in shape and switching positions. Of course, he was playing center for a while. He's playing center with a broken hand when he first come to Florida. And we remember that spring game when Roger Kearney had to be out there as an early enrollee, playing center, not really his position of choice. And we saw the struggles there. But, hey, look, now switching to guard, more his natural position there. Now opens the door for Jason Zendamela, Marcus Maskall to be available at center now. So I think one more time, depth is starting to be Zendamela, really, really highly recruited. Never played a down at USC, transfers into Florida last year, highly recruited. Marcus Maskall, pretty high recruit himself as well, or higher recruit than, kind of the – you heard Rob Sale mention that. Hey, look, we all love the 4 and 5 stars, but they evaluate just a bit different. And it was interesting to hear how he kind of – propped up Napier a bit too for the offensive line recruiting there. So yeah, we'd all love the 4 and 5 stars, of course, and we've seen the fair share go to other schools. But now, the recruiting has uptick a bit, and I think when you see Zendamela and a Kearney and what Florida's done there with Tavares Dice this last cycle too. I mean, there's some sprinkles in there, but without the 4 or 5 stars. When you're going into year 4, this is when you really should be seeing the development happen. So your Marcus Mascalls, your Roderick Kearneys, your Fletcher Westfalls, you Caden Jones, all the those type of players. This is when we should start, seeing those guys more. And we would see them more. But Florida's got the fortunate, being so fortunate now that you had Austin Barber coming back. Najee Harris was, one of those recruited guys, early on in the tenure. So him going into his third season, he's been playing since he was a freshman and playing a lot of snaps as a freshman. He's another player where, okay, he was really highly recruited at one time, fell a bit in the rankings before he signed with Florida. But you see it, in his third year, developed into a starter now. Started last year, starting this year. But Jake Slaughter coming back, that kind of holds back from a guy that you recruited along the way to take over. I mean, so Florida's in a fortunate situation. Some bodies came back that you're not necessarily hearing from some of the younger guys yet, but being able to hang on to those. Not a lot of transfers out. So Florida's going to be developing these guys for quite some time. And when it's their time, besides the on-field experience, they're going to be in the weight room for a few years. They're going to be in the playbook for a few years. And you hope along the way this year, and offensive line, you're not rotating a whole lot. When you go look at PFF and you look at snap counts, it's, you're these starting 4 offensive linemen that we're talking about played a ton of snaps last year. So you don't really want to rotate if you don't have to. You want your continuity. You'll hear that word brought up a good bit here. But you'd like to sprinkle those guys in so when they have to take over, when Florida loses a good bit of these bodies after this 2025 season, you hope this spring goes a long way in making some of those guys ready. You hope when this 2025 season, Florida can play with some cushions a bit, work some guys in too. If a guy needs breather, or if you got some confidence and you don't need these guys to play so many snaps, well, maybe you can go slide somebody in and feel comfortable with it. So, your Zandamellas, your Mascals, your Westfalls, I hope we see them at some point this season. And I hope it's in more of a positive light, just going out there and getting them snaps, or they have the confidence to put them out there and go get them some snaps while your starters take a rest and the drop-off is not there. Cam Waits, of course, somebody who's been in the program for a while. He'll be cross-training at multiple spots, so somebody you'll see along the offensive line. So, look, it's a pretty deep group. I think you can start pointing to some depth being developed. We'll just see how it all shakes out as far as snap count goes and everything. But on the surface, 4 or 5 starters coming back. I'm going to be interested to see if it's 4 or 5 starters by the time. I'm really interested in that right guard battle. I do think it's a real battle between Damian George and Roderick Kearney. We'll see how far it goes. All right, let's keep it going right here. Let's hear from the All-American Jake Slaughter as we hear more about the pieces involved and a great mindset for the team this offseason.
It's super important. That's something that not many people can say they have, and the continuity that we have, just the brotherhood, the camaraderie that we built, and being in the fire together, and it's something that you only get over time and reps. So I think it's super important. I'm really looking forward to working with my guys again.
Jake, I don't know how much you read stuff, but the last couple of years when you read previews, people thought that the offensive line was maybe a weakness. Nobody's saying that anymore. Is there some satisfaction in that, or what?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I read into that stuff too much, but we do everything we can to contribute to the team, and nobody wants to be a weak point on any team, right? So we work day in and day out to contribute, and obviously our goal is to be the best unit in the country. Man, Bryce is one of the most special athletes I've been around, especially as an offensive lineman. I truly mean it when I say he could play all 5 positions, but he just has great movement skills. He bends. He wants to do it. He's getting better in the weight room. He's getting better on the field. So we're all super excited for him.
What are you seeing at Marcus Mascal moving to center there?
Oh man, that's my guy. I'm so dude. I love this because I'm getting to brag on my guys, but Marcus is awesome. He's a really smart kid. It's one of those things. As soon as he gets the confidence, he gets the reps. He knows he can get it out quick. Make his ID, make his call, get set, snap the ball, and roll. He's going to be super special.
What do you think of Jason and kind of what he's been able to show so far now, especially now that he's healthy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jason, he just obviously he's healthy now. He's all the way, and he has great movement skills. He's a super powerful athlete. You know what I mean? He has a stockier frame. He has a lot of juice, and him and I are different style bodies, but he has a lot of things that I wish I had.
Who's someone on the offensive line that maybe we aren't talking about enough, or someone who could surprise some people this spring?
All my guys, but is that the right answer? But no,
it's politically correct answer.
Right? No, I absolutely love Rod Kearney and I love Damian George. Those 2 guys, they come to work every day and they're just big, strong people movers. I love working with them.
Kearney was a former Under Armour All-American, and he's been through a lot with position changes, right? And he had a broken hand. Just his evolution and what you've seen from him, kind of sticking with it.
Yeah, Rod, I think he's the hardest working guy in every room he steps into. He came in with a broken hand, learned how to play center, and ultimately he kind of figured out trial by fire. He wanted to play guard. He liked it better, and it might have fit better for him, but he can still do both. He loves playing guard, and I love getting reps with him because he gets after it, man. He's feisty. He got some fire in his gut.
You guys obviously got a lot of confidence from the way the season ended. Just with that in mind, how key is it to avoid complacency despite winning the last 4 games of the season? And who have been some of the guys, along with yourself, who've been speaking up and reiterating the message that we haven't accomplished everything that we want to accomplish yet?
Yeah, I think complacency, like you said, is the biggest thing to avoid. We don't want to pick up where we left off. We want to keep elevating. So, guys like Austin Barber, George Gums, I think DJ's done a really good job elevating guys around him. Our running back room, they're full of, just alpha dogs that want to go in there and get after it. So, there's guys all over. I could brag on anybody, but there's been a lot of guys who are looking to elevate what we're doing.
Love that mindset. Keep on elevating. I mean, we got to be honest with ourselves. As good as that November felt last year at beating Florida State and winning a bowl game, in the big picture of things, you still got a lot more to prove before so many people buy in. We know that the schedule's tough again, and there's a lot of positive mojo and a lot of positive talk this offseason about Florida, but you ain't proven it yet. You still got a lot to go out there and prove. And what you have to prove is November wasn't a fluke, and keep on elevating, use that as a springboard. And now you got a good mix of experience and youth together, youth coming back, definitely a good bit of leadership that can only come by being on the field. So, and again, I think when you start looking at this offensive line, Jake Slaughter and his mindset there, I think it's a big plus for Lagway. Lagway playing with Slaughter last season and being able to rely on him, but also to rely on him still, making checks and making calls and, being able to help in the protections. And I mean, it's, you're getting a center. If you're DJ Lagway, you're looking right in front of you. You're getting a center that's playing his third season. I mean, go back 2 seasons ago, Jake Slaughter taking over for an injured Kingsley Aguakin. Happened early in the season. Florida goes to Utah. The game didn't look good. Jake Slaughter, you could tell he was a young guy getting his first reps, but you could also tell by the end of the 2023 season. Well, my bad. Not even at the end of it. As the 2023 season went on, you started picking up that, hey, this Jake Slaughter guy might be pretty good. Hey, Jake Slaughter might be better than Kingsley Aguakin. And by the time the 2023 season had come, you were saying that. And then we come to the 2024 season, and he's got an All-American break, ending his second full season playing. So he's going into his third season, and he's got an All-American break right outside the stadium. If you're DJ Lagway, I mean, that's a plus for you. That's a plus for you as well. So there's a lot of leadership, a lot of experience right there to go hand in hand with Lagway. Help carry Lagway along the way a bit too, I think. And not saying Lagway can't do it or wouldn't be able to do it without Jake Slaughter, but it's just an added bonus. I mean, you'd rather have that situation than not. And like I said, it should be a bonus. It should you put the talent of Lagway paired with a bit of experience with Lagway, pairing that with Jake Slaughter and everything he brings back. And the leadership that he can bring now to the other, you heard him talk about bringing the other centers along, bringing Jason Zanamella along, bringing Marcus Maskell along. I love what he said about the 2 players that everybody should be looking out for. And he mentions Roderick Kearney, but he mentions Damian George along with it. So that goes back to the point where I really do think we're going to have a good battle at right guard. And I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for this offensive line. I mean, the more competition, the better. Should make this offensive line take that next step. So I think there's a lot of good to take away from what Jake Slaughter was saying there and the way he described the players and stuff. But, just it's the mindset of, hey, we cannot rest on our laurels. We cannot just say, hey, remember what we did in November? That was great. They cannot, and we heard it from Tyreek Sapp, and we'll hear from him sometime this spring. I'm trying to wait for Mike Peterson to speak, and we'll talk about the edge group all together. But you heard him say it, there's a lot more to prove. The mindset is, okay, last year wasn't good enough. Last November, as good as it wasn't good enough. There's still another level to go. That's the mindset you want from these players. All right, let's keep it going right here. Rob Sell says he and Austin Barber review every game together, and they really want to zoom out and take a look at everything for him to help him take that next step as well. And the main area of focus is him improving in the run blocking area and then taking his pass blocking to the next level with the help of Jonathan DeCoster and implementing things that he learned with the Cleveland Browns. But Sell emphasized the main focus for Austin Barber is improving in run blocking. If you're into PFF, Slaughter was the lowest rated starting offensive lineman for the Gators, but still graded out above average. About a 68 overall, 69.4 in run grade, and a 67.7 in pass grade. So Austin Barber, playing left tackle, dealt with some injuries in spring. He wasn't even going through spring. Let's go back a year ago. Austin Barber wasn't even doing much at all. So now he's back in spring, getting those spring reps. All the offensive linemen playing together in this spring. So you bring back so many pieces. You're trying to create some depth, and the pieces are there, unlike last year. So here's more from Austin Barber talking about himself, and the offensive line.
I think, there's always a question in the back of my mind that I was thinking about, either if I was going to stay or go. But ultimately, I thought, I believe in this team. I believe what we're building. I believe in this coaching staff. And, I want to be able to, I want to just be able to come and say that, we turned this thing around. And that's what my mindset is with coming back. And, I'm confident in, who the players we have. And, yeah, I think just the confidence I have in this team and where we've progressed, I think just coming back with Jake and Damian, I think was just the right decision for me.
How good can this O-line be?
I think we'd be very good. I think we've progressed really well throughout the course of the season last year, and we brought 4 guys back. And, we got some young guys that are really good. Bryce Lovett, Fletcher Westfall, Rod Kearney. We got so many that can play. I just think it's the sky's limit for us.
What's it like to see how much the position has progressed from when you first got here to now? You guys are arguably the best position on the team.
Yeah, I think it's great just to see how much, how we've gotten older, how we've just, brought in the right pieces. I think it's just the best thing for us. And, it makes me happy to see that my group is looking that good, and it makes me happy. Yeah, I think that's great. Just, we just got, we're together. I feel like we have that mesh of, we trust each other throughout anything. And that's important when you go into these games in the season. And, it's only going to get better from here because we got spring and we got fall. And I think it's just, we can just grow and grow.
You've always led by example, but just how much more comfortable do you feel being a vocal leader with Jake in there?
Yeah, me and Jake have come together and seen some really good leaders, in our time. And, we just want to be those guys that, for the young guys, to help them when we leave and they get older. They can take some stuff from us. I think just trying to be that vocal leader is sometimes a challenge, but, I think it's good for me and Jake to do it.
What was it like working with Coach DeCosta last year? How has he helped develop your game at tackle?
Yeah, I think just bringing in some NFL techniques and fundamentals that was good for us. I think, if I'm not mistaken, just pass pro was a lot better this year, and I think we put a point of emphasis on it from him and Coach Sale, just doing the little things right, staying square, getting your feet right, hand placement. I think it's really beneficial.
Brag about yourself a little bit. How much do you think you improved in the offseason program? What was your point of focus, if anything?
Yeah, I think it was just being healthy. I think that was the best thing, and I've took advantage of it. Really trying to get stronger in all areas, and just going back and watching the film as well and seeing what I didn't do good and what I can improve on, and I've really took pride and wanted to be better. So I've done that. I think I'm getting to that point.
A lot of pride right there. A lot of pride from Austin Barber. Coming back to finish the job. That was kind of the message right there. Not being completely happy. he could have left. I don't know how high he would really been drafted and all that. He would have been drafted. But coming back to finish the job. And as you mentioned, with Damian George, with Jake Slaughter, and go to defense with Caleb Banks, with Tyreek Sapp, and these trench pieces coming back. Here for the Gators, and Austin Barber's a big part of that. And look, coming back to finish the job, look, that goes back to the message that last year needs to be a launching point. You didn't come back to win 6 games. You didn't come back to win 7 games. You come back to improve on last year. You come back to with all these pieces, with not just the experience, but there's a lot of young guys to be excited about. And if you're Austin Barber, you're excited that you get the block for Jaden Ball. You're excited you get the pass protect for a quarterback like DJ Lagway. So it's coming back to finish the job, but knowing that, hey, this is a really good team we got. And if I can come back and Jake Slaughter can, an All-American come back, one of my best friends on the team can come back. Let's do something special. Let's do something special. So I think that's the viewpoint for a lot of these guys, is coming back. I'm sure they had the conversation. Hey, let's come back and try something, do something together. And then, Florida hasn't been Florida for quite some time. We can be the group to change it all around. Use the experience to take the next step. There's nothing this group hasn't seen as far, especially along the offensive line. But, the pieces, Florida's not going to have to be relying on true freshmen on offense or necessarily on defense. If you got true freshmen out there playing, with the way this team is made up right now, if a true freshman's out there making plays, you know they earned it. You know, because the experience that this team brings back, man, I'm telling you. I mean, receiver, okay, you can see where you recruited some highly, highly regarded freshmen. Okay, they might can make their way in and make plays. Same thing for the safety group and cornerback. But still, they got guys that they have to overcome. Florida's not having to put freshmen out there because they don't have anybody else. That's not the case here. So you hope that turns into, or you hope you pair that with all the experience that this team has, and that they've seen everything. They can share as much as they can with the younger players, and then it pays off. So that was the message. Those guys coming back, it means a lot. I think it means a lot there. For those guys to be the squad to help make Florida again. All right. Enjoyed hearing from Rob Sell, Austin Barber, Jake Slaughter. Good stuff there from those guys. Good stuff there from those guys. Hey, chat, thanks for hopping in. Casual Carolina Fishing, Harrison Sanchez, Jim Martin, Kempo Karate, Bruce Green, all that good stuff. Zach Clark, thanks for hopping in. Hardwired to Self-Destruction back in here as well on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Thanks for hopping in, everybody. I know it's kind of short notice. Believe me, full-time job that's crazy busy right now, which is a good thing. Time changing, so trying to spend some time outside a little bit as well. So trying to log these interviews and come up with storylines for these interviews. I didn't know when I was going to be able to come out with this episode of Gators Breakdown, but certainly wanted to get it out when I could. So thanks for the short notice that you guys hopping in right here. But hey, let's go to the defensive side of the football. Let's talk about the trenches on that side. Now, when it comes to the defensive line, the word "wow" comes into mind. What a difference a year makes under Gerald Chatman. Some quality of play with a change in the coaching staff on that side of the ball. Gerald Chatman comes in, and hey, by the end of the season, that group was playing oh so well. And Sean Spencer on the way out. Gerald Chatman takes over, not a heralded name, but comes in, and by the end of the year was a force to be reckoned with this group. So he came in with a plan from day one. As he told us in the press conference on Tuesday, just quote, establishing the mentality, just the order and how we do things, how we work. I think it all starts with the mindset first with any player, but specifically with defensive linemen. And I remember going back a year ago when he was on the field for the first time in spring practice, it was noticeable. And there's a loud voice out there. There's a guy that's really getting after it, and that's Gerald Chatman. And he's challenging his defensive lineman over and over again. And I mean, I remember, if I remember right, it could have been fall camp, but it maybe spring camp. But like emotions get the best of the defensive lineman, but you can just tell it was a mindset. That mindset he's talking about. You got to be nasty to play SEC defensive line football. I mean, it is brutal. It is brutal out there, and it was so good to see at the end of the season that it was Florida's defensive line that was laying the brutality out there. I mean, it was a group that they were really controlling games. I mean, you can really see how the mindset shift paid off for that Florida defensive line. I mean, I think in the end, it kind of just formed a tight brotherhood between those guys on the defensive line. It just really took to the coaching style of Gerald Chatman. I mean, there was a lot of the same guys that were under Sean Spencer, and it wasn't just these guys were a year older, so it made them play better. No, I think it was the mindset Gerald Chatman brought in. If Sean Spencer was still the defensive line coach last year, I think we saw enough before that where I don't know if we were getting that. I don't know if the switch flipped. Now, don't get me wrong. They had their struggles to the beginning of the season, just like the whole team did. But I don't know if they ever would have got out of that with Sean Spencer still leading them. Gerald Chatman comes in, and I think it took some time. And you'll hear him kind of talk about it a little bit, but that mindset, it finally took over. It finally clicked. When you look at the strides they made in 2024, his first year in Gainesville, it's pretty remarkable with the way they were just controlling games at the end. In pivotal moments, just controlling the game. Let's hear more from Gerald Chatman.
Caleb Banks, I think it's first off, I'm looking for him to continue to grow as a man, as a whole person. Besides the football piece of it, just I really just care about him, as a person in his life, and then just continue to develop his leadership. Like I said, just all around person, all around man. I think that's going to be huge for him. And then obviously, having a guy like that who started to play. Reach a peak at towards the back end of the season last year, is getting him to do that from day one and then be consistent throughout the whole year, and that's a challenge. And so for him, the whole mentality of it is like, hey, look, this is not just a walk in the park. This is not just, hey, you come back and you're that guy. You have to work to be that guy. You have to work to be that guy that we've seen at the tail end of the season. And it's going to take for you to work your craft. It's going to take for you to take care of your body. It's going to take for you to prehab. It's going to take for you to be in the film room like we started from day one, right? And working the technique and fundamentals. It's going to take for you to play with relentless effort and discipline and toughness. So, it's never playing defensive line is not just like, hey, you can go out there and just do it. Like it's a process to doing it. It doesn't matter if you're Caleb Banks or it doesn't matter if you're a freshman coming in. So I want Caleb to continue to grow as a man, and I think he has a great future ahead of him. And I do believe he's going to do it the right way. Jamari, man, is a special kid. He's a stand-up guy. He went through his adversity and last year in camp. So I think it's a blessing to just have him back out there. He's one of those impactful guys, just his presence amongst the group, having him there and working, and the guys seeing him work. He has that type of impact on other guys, on his teammates. So that alone, is huge, just having him out there. And then it's always a blessing to seeing guys be able to come back from injuries and be able to run again and move around again, man. So, especially those bigger guys, it's really tough. It's tough on them, So it's really exciting to have him back out there, and he's sticking to his process, and and it's important to get him to just understand, like, hey, stay with the process. Don't get discouraged. I know you want to be out there doing everything right now, but it's part of the process. So it's great, man, having him out there.
What are next steps for Makai, and what are you seeing? He's going to factor pretty big, I would think, at the nose.
Yes, Makai is doing a great job. He's a smart kid. He's a tough kid. I expect him to have a big role, going forward. He's getting better with the technique and fundamentals. It's always great to have a guy like that you get from very start, from day one, as a true freshman. And then, he worked his way into being able to play, his first year and get some playing experience. And so that's very valuable, because it's not like we got a guy that it'll be his first time going out there playing. I mean, he lined up and played versus Georgia. He played in Kentucky. He played in those meaningful games. He played versus LSU. He played, in those tough SEC games. And then he was around older guys, so he also had the opportunity to learn from older guys. Learn the good and the bad from those guys, and then so he has a lot. As far as his on the field and his off the field as well.
All right, there we go. Gerald Chatman diving into the defensive line. But, hey, let's dive in even more. Let's go through what Florida has here. Unlike the offensive line, defensive line, hey, you want to be able to rotate bodies. Now, I won't say you will rotate bodies, because you can have guys playing way too many snaps. And we saw that with Jervon Dexter a couple years ago. I don't think Florida's that dire right now. I think – there are some young players. You heard Gerald Chatman kind of go through those guys, but I think with what you have in front of them, you can with like the Caleb Banks, and especially if Jamar Lyons comes back, your Makai Burrows and your DeAndre Robinsons. I think you don't have to force and make those guys play so many snaps when they're so young. It's a luxury Florida has right now. Now they still got to create some depth, and it is a question how those guys will perform, but you want to be able to rotate. You want a bunch of bodies on defensive line. So let's just go through it a bit. Caleb Banks, of course. I mean, one of the two most significant returns for the defensive front for the Gators, alongside edge rusher Tyreek Sapp, of course. I mean, getting back Banks and Sapp back together as a combo, ooh, man, that's good for you. That's good. You had that. I mean, you saw in the two biggest games when Florida just needed the wins. Florida needed to turn the season around. Banks breakout, dominant performances versus LSU and Ole Miss. Had a co-defensive lineman of the week against the Rebels. I mean, finished the season. Guys, this is where you get, when you look at defensive linemen, you don't go by we'll go through the stats here. But it's not all about the stats. You go watch Caleb Banks play and see how important he was. 21 total tackles. You'd have been like, okay, I think as good as he played, he probably would have had more than that. That's not his job. Not completely his job. But if he's getting tackles, okay, that's good. I mean, put it this way. He's got 21 tackles. 10 of them were solo. This is what you want. Out of those 21 tackles, 7 for a loss. A third of his tackles were for a loss. That's what you want to see. 4.5 sacks. 2 forced fumbles. And a recovered fumble in 12 games with 10 starts. Now, of course, a lot of that, and you heard what Chatman said, market consistency, a lot of that toward the end of the season. So let's imagine if we get that type of production all season long. I mean, he set career highs with those 21 tackles and those 4.5 sacks. He had 29 quarterback pressures, 13 defensive, 29 quarterback pressures. I mean, that's from up the middle. Pretty good. So he improved with 5 more tackles for loss from the season before and 3.5 more sacks than the year before. So if there's another step for Caleb Banks, then it's looking like what he did late season in that late season stretch and replicating that all season long. We want to see that in almost every game in 2025. Now, you're not going to get that. I mean, if you can get that level of play game in and game out, okay, you're talking Caleb Banks just shooting up draft boards being first-round pick material. Now, does he have that in him? I don't know. But we need to see it. We need to see that a few times in 2025. And we need to see it like it was Ole Miss and LSU. We need to see it in the big games. When it's Miami and it's LSU on the road. There's Georgia and Jacksonville, Texas coming to the swamp. That's where we need that type of Caleb Banks to show up. Yeah, I'll take you any other place I can get it. I need to see it in those big games, like we saw versus LSU and Ole Miss. Those big games. We need big game Caleb Banks. Maybe that's what we'll call him. Big game Caleb Banks. Now, I don't want to just have that moniker for him where he only shows up in big games. No, I want him to show up versus Kentucky, and I want him to show up versus your other schools out there too. Look, I can't even name that Mississippi State. Yeah, you can't even name not big name schools hardly on Florida's schedule. We can say, oh yeah, I wouldn't show like that versus Miami too. No, Miami can be pretty good. LSU can be pretty good. Tennessee can be pretty good. FSU, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on FSU. But no, I want Caleb Banks to show up in we all know in the games that matter. Does every game matter? Sure. Some games matter more than others. Those are the games Caleb Banks needs to be LSU, Ole Miss, Caleb Banks. Brian Taylor, another senior there. As we kind of just go in order of class here. Your JUCO made 10 appearances in 2024, 14 tackles, 5 of them solo, 2 tackles for loss. He had a quarterback hurry. Got his first start against Texas in place of Banks, who was banged up that week. So, and that was the thing. Remember, Caleb Banks got banged up, didn't play versus Texas, and then came back to those LSU and Ole Miss performances. Keep it going here. Jamari Lyons. There's a pause there. And there's a reason there's a pause there. And Harrison, I'm going to go back to one of your comments, man, because I just saw it. If Lyons comes back the same, our defensive line could be dominant. And there was a reason there was a pause there, Harrison, in Gator Nation. The reason there was a pause there is Jamari Lyons might just be one of my key cogs, key important pieces for this defense, for this defensive front. Now, I ain't saying Florida can't be good without him, but kind of going to Harrison's point here, and now look, that means the offseason talk of him has to be true as well, but just say it is. And he is at least Cam Jackson level, but maybe even better. And I won't say he'd be massively better. I mean, Cam Jackson was playing pretty well. But if you at least get that production out of him, but maybe just a hair better, But if you get that, and that offseason talk last year was any kind of true, I agree. I mean, I think it sets up Florida's defensive line to be pretty special. And to me, it gives a really good combo of Banks and Lyons together. And look, I just think it's so fortunate and so good to see him out there. I mean, you heard Gerald Chatman just talk him up about him being out there in spring practice. Now, still limited somewhat, but with what we have seen and him moving around and how fast he's moving around and how well he's moving around, I didn't expect that. I mean, there was talk coming into fall camp that or spring camp, that he'd be pretty limited. So from what we're seeing so far, if he can come along, and also mentally now, getting over that broken ankle before the season started in fall training camp, the injury derailed his trajectory. We were hearing so much behind the scenes about Jamar Lyons, and I was trying to share it as much as on the podcast as I could, because I didn't want it to be much of a shock. I was like, hey, there's one player I was hearing about a whole lot last fall camp. That was Jamar Lyons. So look, that doesn't always pan out. So hopefully it does. But man, you get him in a role in this defensive line right there beside Cam Banks or Caleb Banks. Florida's defensive line should be in good shape. Really good shape. Keeping it going. I mean, look, Cam Jackson, Des Watson are out. I mean, they really need Jamar Lyons to be that guy. Now, look, I don't have much of an issue of having to rely on Mekhi Burrow and DeAndre Robinson. I'd rather not. That's not a shot at them. And I think a lot of this really does go back to what we were hearing about Lyons. Now, if we had never heard that, and Jamar Lyons gets hurt in preseason fall camp, and, I'm sitting here saying, okay, this will probably be a pretty good three-man battle between Lyons, Robinson, and Burrow. But if Lyons is what we thought we were hearing last year, then it gives you a pretty good 1-2 punch up front, and then you got some guys that can come in and fill in. Good point here before I get off there. You guys talking about Tyreek Sapp, of course, Harrison Sanchez. Sapp's PFF grades were incredible, absolutely. As I said, go back to about a month ago, Harrison, when I was, I guess a few weeks ago. Remember when I was doing all the returning production? And we'll get into this later when Tyreek Sapp, and we talk about the edge group. But Tyreek Sapp is the highest graded returning player for Florida and Florida's opponents. I think it was a 90.9 grade, if I remember off the top of my head right. So if you subscribe, and I do somewhat, it's not the end all be all, and it's not everything, but PFF grades have a point. But yeah, Tyreek Sapp is the highest graded returning player for Florida and their opponents. So you pair that with this defensive line. We'll keep going down it in just a second. But yeah, going to casual Carolina's Fishing's point, Sapp would be a top round draft pick if he hadn't changed positions so much. Absolutely. I'm glad he found a home last year. And one of those other players, he played well throughout the whole season, but he had another level to him. I can't ruin all my Tyreek Sapp talk before we get into edge position, but you guys got me hyped up a little bit. I had to get it in there. But yeah, I mean, just look at Tavoris Brown, another body here. Of course, a walk-on junior college transfer. Last season he appeared in 3 games, so another guy to throw into the mix. 6 foot, about 6'7", 290. So a guy you might be able to move around a little bit up front. DeAndre Robinson, as I said, in his second year. Remember this? He was a late pickup, was going to Texas. Gets out of that, was released from his national letter of intent. He comes to Florida. Appeared in 11 games, made his first career start in the Gasparilla Bowl against Tulane. 3 tackles in that game as well. So his first start, 3 tackles. Pretty good for a guy up front. He had 17 tackles for the season, 3 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 3 stops, and 2 pressures over his 162 snaps. He can play. They can move him around, play both defensive line spots. So it might be more needed at nose tackle. We'll see where Jamar lands, how much. But, as I said, he's still somewhat limited this spring. So Robinson getting some reps at nose tackle this spring, but another guy they can move around a bit. Mekhi Burrow, you heard the conversation, 6'5", 350 pounds. Certainly had an immediate role for Florida last year. I mean, 14.3 snaps per game over his over his first 3 games, over his first 3 contests last year. Played regularly last year, appeared in 12 games, providing depth at nose tackle. So certainly a guy with the departures at that position. I think he'll have a big role. 8 total tackles in his first 3 games, 2 more solo stops versus Tulane. Burrow finished with 15 tackles, 7 solo, and 4 stops. I mean, as I just mentioned there, 15 tackles for Mekhi Burrow. Caleb Banks had 21. So that when you talk about a guy who flashed in 144 snaps, with 7 of them being solo, Mekhi Burrow is that guy. So, yeah, he's going to get some playing time. Has that profile as a nose tackle, earned those snaps as a three technique tackle as well. Got some, play some defensive end as a freshman too. So certainly a guy who's versatile, but he's going to be in that nose tackle spot, backing up Jamari Lyons. Stephon Shivers, true freshman, listed at 399 pounds. I think if you've been on social media, you've seen highlights there. You've seen some highlights. What he had to say about him, Gerald Chatman did. He's huge. He's strong. It's always good to have those types of guys in the room, Chatman said. So I think, if you looking for a guy who could replicate Mekhi Burrow's stats in 2024, it might be Shivers. But of course, a lot to learn. Got to learn the technique. And look, Gerald Chatman says he's putting a lot on his plate right now. Quote, a lot to put pressure on them early to see how they handle that. According to Chatman, he won't ever make things easy for a first-year player. He wants football and development to be a challenge, something that it's on the offense or it's on the lineman's mind. Quote, when he goes to sleep at night and when he wakes up. So he wants it to be a challenge. Gerald Chatman does not want it to be easy. Does not want it to be easy. Hey, you look good. We don't want it to be easy either. I mean, what did we hear from these players last year? A good bit. When they were struggling on defense and they had the bad performances versus Miami, the bad performance versus Texas A&M, and the word coming out was these guys wanted to be challenged. They wanted to be challenged in practice. It took that first bye week to kind of get there, but every week was a competition. Now, it stings, and it stinks that it took so long to get there. Why couldn't that be realized before? And I won't necessarily put that on the players. Maybe the coaching staff should have noticed that a good bit. It shouldn't have taken the players to go and say, hey, we want practice to be harder. We want to be challenged more. But it's out there now. And if that's what it took, and that was a revelation, then hopefully that's continuing to go on all throughout spring to a limit, but certainly when fall camp comes around. But Gerald Chatman certainly seems to have that mindset already. Jeremiah McLeod, of course, is a name, top 300 player. Of course, they're up front. So 71 tackles, 17 and a half tackles for loss, 9 sacks as a senior. So you throw him into the mix as well. 6'3", 280. So, we'll see. Florida's got some freshmen that they might can, throw into the mix. But I'm really excited about the potential of Caleb Banks and Jamari Lyons as a starting combo. And then Chapman, he continued that conversation about Banks. We were talking about some younger players here. And for spring practice right now, that Banks, even though being limited with that foot injury, of course, so these young guys getting reps, that it's important to have Banks around, help coach the young guys, and as well as taking the mental reps. So Banks out there, according to Chapman, because, he wants him out there. He wants him out there helping those young guys. And even more on DeAndre Robinson from Gerald Chatman and his skill set, saying, quote, he's twitched up. And saying that he'll have a big role this year, and that having him, since he came in as a freshman, is a big advantage. So, hey, I recruited you. You were here a year ago. We were both in our first years together. But having you as a freshman and now going into year 2 is a big advantage. So now, since there's guys like him and Mekhi that are getting the bulk of reps with Banks being limited right now. So I'll go back to one more time. That helped, I think, offensive line last year. I think it helped the linebacker group last year with some of the injuries and young guys having to step up, young guys getting the reps in fall camp or spring practice. It's happening a little bit up front on the defensive line as well. But I like the quote, he's twitched up. Hearing that about DeAndre Robinson, pretty good thing, getting quicker in his second year for the Gators up front on this defensive line. All right, everybody. Good stuff. Good stuff. Man, I didn't think I'd go almost an hour, but we sure did. We sure did, didn't we? I don't think I stretched too much. I don't think there was a lot of fluff in this episode. If there was, I'm sorry, but man, I thought it was a pretty good episode. You guys let me know. If you stuck around, to 55 minutes into the episode. Some of the chat, certainly guys still hanging around, but Rob S does bring up a good point when we were talking about, the injuries and how that can derail, because we were hearing the same things about Justice Boone. He gets injured, and we never really saw him take that leap. And Rob S brings up that point. Yeah, we thought Boone was going to be A+ coming back from injury last year. So, yeah, hopefully it's not the injury that would slow down whatever progress that we thought we'd see from Jamari Lyons last year. Hopefully it's not a similar situation here. But another thing is too, I mean, there's two ways to go about that. Was the behind the scenes offseason talk about Boone being that guy, was it true? And if it was, okay, was it the injury that held him back? Or was it not true and he was never going to be that player in the first place? That's the beauty of spring ball and fall camp and words that come out. Sometimes they're true and sometimes they're not. We got to see it all play out. But all right, everybody, good stuff right here. Everybody, thanks for hopping in on this episode of Gators Breakdown. A little bit of trench talk here. Strength in the trenches with this Florida Gator offensive line, returning 4 starters. Gerald Chatman leading a pretty good group of defensive linemen. A little more questions there, but with somebody like Caleb Banks coming back, and if I mention one more time, Jamari Lyons lives up to that reputation, I think that group's going to be pretty good. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown, everybody. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. And guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.